She was just a starving alien child until her assassin mother came after me. Adam had just finished his shift at the garage when the evening air began to cool, signaling the end of another long day. He was ready to head home, his stomach growling in protest. Walking down the street, he spotted the familiar lights of a small diner he liked to stop at now and then. Tonight, it seemed more inviting than usual, so he decided to go in and grab a bite. As he opened the door, the familiar bell above the entrance rang out. The smell of sizzling food and coffee greeted him, making his stomach rumble even louder. Adam smiled at the waitress behind the counter, who waved in return. He slid onto one of the stools at the counter, his eyes scanning the menu out of habit, though he already knew what he wanted. A burger, fries, and something to wash it all down. Just as he started to place his order, something caught his attention. A small figure, barely noticeable at first, sat in one of the corner booths near the back. At first, Adam thought it might be a child, but then he realized it was something else entirely. A young girl, barely 12 years old, sat hunched over, her tiny frame almost hidden beneath a ragged cloak. Her skin was pale, and her face had a look of desperation, as though she hadn't eaten in days. Her hands gripped the table, her knuckles white from the tightness of her hold. Adam felt a pang of sympathy. He had grown up poor, and though his life was far from perfect, he had never been as hungry as this girl must have been. He glanced at her again, and his gaze softened. There was something about her that drew him in, a sense of vulnerability and fear that seemed to radiate from her. After a moment of hesitation, Adam stood up from his seat. His food could wait. He made his way over to the booth where the girl sat, still oblivious to his approach. "Hey there," Adam said gently, not wanting to startle her. "Are you okay?" The girl didn't look up at first, but after a long pause, her eyes slowly met his. They were a striking shade of violet, unusual and almost otherworldly. Adam couldn't help but notice how wide and fearful they were, like she was constantly watching her surroundings, always on alert. "I'm fine," she said quietly, her voice barely a whisper. The words seemed forced, as though she wasn't used to speaking at all. Adam nodded but didn't buy it. "You sure? You don't look fine. You look like you could use a good meal." The girl's eyes flickered for a moment, almost like she was about to protest, but she quickly lowered her gaze back to the table. Adam knew better than to press her too hard. He glanced at the waitress, who had seen him approach. With a small nod, Adam motioned for her to bring over some food for the girl. He turned back to the young alien sitting in front of him. "Why don't you let me get you something to eat?" Adam offered kindly, sitting down across from her. "No one should have to sit here hungry." The girl hesitated for a long moment, her eyes darting nervously to the door as if she expected someone to burst in at any second. Adam couldn't help but notice the way she was scanning the room. It was as if she didn't trust anyone around her. "You don't have to do this," she said softly, barely audible. Adam chuckled lightly. "It's not a big deal, I'm just trying to help." The girl looked at him, her expression unreadable. After a moment, she nodded slowly, the tension in her shoulders easing just a little. Adam sat back, relieved to see that she was willing to accept his offer. The waitress soon arrived, setting down a plate of food in front of the girl, a simple sandwich with some fruit on the side. Adam could see the girl's hands trembling as she picked up the sandwich, almost as if she hadn't eaten in days. Without another word, the girl dug into the food, her hunger unmistakable. Adam watched her for a moment, feeling a strange connection with this mysterious child. As she ate, Adam allowed his curiosity to get the better of him. "What's your name?" he asked gently, trying to make conversation. The girl paused mid-bite, her eyes flickering up to meet his. "Lyra," she said quietly. There was a certain finality to her words, as if she didn't want to say any more. "Lyra, huh?" Adam repeated softly, trying to sound casual. "That's a nice name. Where are you from?" For a moment there was no response. Lyra's gaze dropped back to her food, and Adam noticed how carefully she chewed, almost like she was savoring each bite. She hadn't had a meal this good in a long time, he thought. But then, without warning, Lyra tensed up, her shoulders stiffening again. Adam followed her gaze and saw what had caused the change. A tall figure had entered the diner, a woman with a confident stride and an intimidating air about her. She scanned the room quickly before her eyes locked onto Lyra's booth. The moment their eyes met, Lyra froze, her hand trembling slightly as she continued to eat. Adam felt a chill run down his spine. There was something about the woman's presence that didn't sit right. She looked like she belonged in a different world entirely. Her dark, tight-fitting outfit and the cold, calculating way she carried herself made her stand out in stark contrast to the quiet, harmless diner atmosphere. The woman moved toward the back of the diner, her eyes never leaving Lyra. Adam stood up, ready to intervene if needed. But before he could speak, the woman reached the booth and stood over Lyra. "You," the woman said, her voice low and cold. "Where is she?" Lyra flinched, her eyes wide with fear. She didn't speak, but her body language said it all. This woman wasn't someone to be messed with. Adam stepped forward, trying to act casual. "Excuse me, do you know this girl?" he asked, his voice firm but friendly. The woman turned slowly to face him, her eyes narrowing. "I have business with her, it's none of your concern," she replied, her tone icy. Adam stood his ground, but something in the woman's gaze made him uneasy. She wasn't just a regular diner customer. There was something about her that screamed danger. Before he could say anything else, the woman turned back to Lyra. "We're leaving, now." Lyra's face paled, and she seemed to shrink in on herself, as if trying to disappear into the booth. Adam had never seen anyone so scared before. He instinctively stepped closer to her, his protective instincts kicking in. "I'm not letting you take her," Adam said, his voice steady but filled with warning. The woman didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, cold and dangerous. "You think you can stop me?" she asked, her smile turning into a sneer. "I don't think you understand who you're dealing with." Adam's heart pounded in his chest, his hand tightening into a fist. There was no going back now. Whatever this woman wanted from Lyra, Adam wasn't about to let her take the girl without a fight. The woman's eyes flickered to the door, then back to Lyra, her expression turning cold. "I gave you a chance," she said. "Now you'll come with me or things will get much worse." Lyra glanced up at Adam, her face stricken with fear, but there was something else in her eyes now, a spark of recognition, as if she had seen this woman before. The two of them shared a look, and then Lyra stood up, looking at Adam one last time. "Run," she whispered. Adam didn't have time to react. Before he could stop her, Lyra dashed toward the back exit, the woman moving fast behind her. Adam's mind raced as he bolted after them. Whatever was going on, he couldn't let Lyra face it alone. Adam's heart raced as he followed Lyra through the narrow kitchen door and into the dark alley behind the diner. The cool night air hit him hard, carrying with it the smells of city grime and forgotten trash. His eyes darted around, trying to track the movement of the young girl who was already out of sight. He heard the sound of hurried footsteps, Lyra's. He pushed through the door with urgency, the cold wind biting at his face. His mind raced. The woman, the one who had been standing over Lyra in the diner, had made it clear she wasn't here to chat. There was something wrong about her, something dangerous. Adam's breath came out in sharp bursts as he scanned the alley, trying to catch a glimpse of Lyra. He couldn't lose her, not after what she'd gone through. He needed to protect her, but from what? And why had she run from that woman so quickly? He turned the corner just in time to see Lyra slip through a gap between two old, rusted dumpsters. The moonlight barely reached the alley, making the darkness feel deeper, more oppressive. But Lyra was quick. Her movements were sharp and calculated, like she knew exactly where she was going. "Lyra!" Adam called, his voice echoing off the alley walls. His heart pounded louder than his footsteps. "Wait!" Lyra didn't respond. She just kept running, faster now, her small frame darting through the shadows. Adam's instincts told him not to follow so recklessly, but he couldn't let her go alone, especially not with the woman in pursuit. Adam pushed himself harder, ducking under a low-hanging pipe and jumping over a pile of old crates. He wasn't a trained athlete, but he'd kept himself in decent shape over the years, and tonight, that was his only advantage. As he rounded another corner, he finally saw her. Lyra had reached a dead end. The alley narrowed further, and there was no way out except the path she had come. But she wasn't standing still. Her body was tense, her back against the brick wall, her violet eyes scanning every corner of the dark alley. She was waiting, ready for something to happen. Adam slowed his pace and stepped forward cautiously. "Lyra," he said again, softer this time, "it's okay. You're safe now. Just come with me. We'll figure this out together." She didn't speak, but her eyes flickered to the ground as if weighing her options. Her breathing was quick, shallow. There was a nervous energy around her, like she was waiting for something to explode. Then a shadow moved at the far end of the alley. The woman. She emerged from the darkness, her tall figure cutting through the low light like a predator on the hunt. Adam's stomach churned. Her eyes locked onto Lyra, and there was a coldness in them, as if the girl's life meant nothing to her. Lyra, the woman said in a low, commanding voice. It's time to come with me. Lyra stiffened, her small hands curling into fists at her sides. Her face was pale, but there was a hint of determination there, a flicker of something that made Adam's heart skip a beat. She wasn't just a scared, starving child. There was more to her than that, much more. You don't have to do this, Adam said, stepping in front of Lyra. Who are you? What do you want with her? The woman didn't flinch. Her eyes never left Lyra, but she seemed to take in Adam's words. This is none of your business, she replied, her voice calm but carrying an edge that made Adam's skin crawl. I'm here to take what's mine. Adam shook his head. No one owns anyone, he said, his voice rising. He wasn't backing down, not now, not after what he'd seen. I won't let you hurt her. The woman's expression darkened, but she didn't move. You don't understand, she said. She's not just a child, she's dangerous. She has powers you couldn't possibly comprehend. Adam frowned. Dangerous? Lyra, she was just a scared, hungry girl who had shown him nothing but trust. He couldn't believe what the woman was saying. You're wrong, he said, stepping forward, his voice steady but firm. She's not dangerous. The woman's lips curled into a tight smile. You have no idea what she's capable of. Before Adam could respond, there was a sudden flash of movement. Lyra had pushed past him, her small body suddenly alive with purpose. In the blink of an eye, she was standing between him and the woman. Adam's breath caught in his throat. It was as if she had moved with the speed of a predator, her body fluid and quick. Lyra, no! Adam shouted, reaching out for her, but she didn't hear him. Her eyes were locked on the woman now, her face no longer filled with fear. There was something else there. Something fierce, something he hadn't seen before. You don't know what you're dealing with, Lyra said, her voice low and steady, a stark contrast to the shaky, scared tone she had used earlier. It was almost as if she was a completely different person now. I'm not what you think I am? The woman paused, studying her for a moment. Then, without warning, she lunged forward, her hand shooting out toward Lyra with lightning speed. Adam's heart stopped. He didn't think, he just reacted. Without even thinking about it, he grabbed Lyra and yanked her out of the way. The woman's hand brushed against the edge of Adam's jacket, but she didn't get a solid grip on him. He barely registered the force of the woman's attack as he pulled Lyra behind him. Stay back, Adam shouted, his voice full of desperation. He didn't know what was going on, but he knew he couldn't let this woman hurt Lyra. He wasn't sure what powers Lyra had, but he saw the way the woman moved, how fast and deadly she was. If they stayed in the open, they wouldn't last. Lyra grabbed Adam's arm, pulling him toward the nearest fire escape. We have to go, she said, her voice trembling. We can't fight her, not yet. Adam wanted to argue to stay and protect her, but he saw the fear in her eyes. She was right. If they stayed, they'd be outmatched. They had no choice but to run. The woman seemed to hesitate, watching them for a brief moment, as if calculating her next move. Then, with a frustrated growl, she stepped forward. You can't escape me, child, she called, her voice cutting through the night air. I will find you. Adam grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her up the metal ladder of the fire escape, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure where they were going, but it didn't matter. They had to get away. As they climbed, Adam glanced down at the woman who was standing still in the alley below, her eyes locked on them with an intensity that made his skin crawl. He could feel the weight of her gaze, and he knew she wouldn't stop until she got what she wanted. They reached the roof, and Adam pulled Lyra up after him, both of them gasping for breath. He didn't know how much time they had before the woman tracked them down, but for now, they were safe. For now. Lyra stood there, staring at the sky, her expression distant. Adam wanted to say something, anything, to comfort her, but he didn't know how. Instead, he simply watched her, wondering what had driven her to this point. What was her past? Why was this woman after her? He didn't have the answers. All he knew was that he had to protect her. He had no idea what was coming, but he couldn't turn his back on her now. And as they stood there, alone on the rooftop, Adam realized something else. This wasn't just about protecting a child. This was about something much bigger. Something that would change everything. The city skyline stretched before them, a sea of flickering lights beneath a dark sky. Adam couldn't remember the last time he'd been on a roof in the middle of the night, but now that he was here, his heart pounded in his chest. He glanced at Lyra, who was standing still at the edge of the roof, her small figure framed against the distant lights. She was quiet, her eyes lost in the vastness of the city below. Adam had never seen a child so full of fear and yet so brave at the same time. The way she'd stood in front of him when that woman attacked, he couldn't forget it. It was like she wasn't just running from something. She was running towards something, something she couldn't explain, but she knew it was inevitable. He stepped closer, his boots clanging lightly against the metal roof. "Lyra," he called softly, trying not to startle her. "You okay?" She didn't look at him, but he saw her shoulders tense slightly. There was a sadness about her that he couldn't shake. It was the kind of sadness that made you feel like you couldn't fix it with a simple hug or kind words. "I'm fine," she said, but the words sounded hollow, like she didn't even believe them herself. Adam didn't push her. He knew she wasn't ready to talk yet. Instead, he moved closer, standing beside her and gazing out at the city with her. For a few minutes, the only sound was the distant hum of traffic, the occasional whistle of wind through the buildings. It was peaceful in a way, almost like nothing dangerous was lurking just beneath the surface. "Who was she?" Adam finally asked, his voice low. He couldn't keep the question inside any longer. There was something off about that woman, something that didn't sit right. Lyra turned her head, and for the first time since they'd met, her eyes met his directly. Her violet eyes were so bright in the moonlight, and yet there was so much pain behind them. It was as if the girl had seen things no one should ever see. "She's my mother," Lyra said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. Adam's breath caught in his throat. He stared at her, trying to process what she had just said. "Your mother," he repeated, shocked. "But she's trying to kill you." Lyra nodded, her eyes dropping to the ground. "She's not really my mother," she said, her words bitter. "At least not the way you think. She's something else." Adam frowned. "Something else? What do you mean?" Lyra paused, looking out over the city again as if she were gathering her thoughts. She took a deep breath and finally spoke. "She's an assassin, a killer who works for a group of people in the galaxy. They sent her to take me back." Adam listened, his mind reeling with the implications. He had seen the way the woman moved, efficient, deadly. She wasn't just some random person looking to cause trouble. She was a trained killer, and Lyra's connection to her was more complicated than he'd imagined. "I don't know why she's after me," Lyra continued, her voice trembling slightly. "But I know she won't stop. She never stops." Adam took a step closer to her, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. She tensed but didn't pull away. "You don't have to go through this alone," he said quietly. "I'm not going to let her hurt you." Lyra's eyes met his again, and for a moment, Adam thought he saw something soften in her gaze. It was a brief flicker, but it was there. "You don't know who she is or what she can do," Lyra said, her voice heavy with warning. "She's not just a person, she's a machine. She's been trained to track me down, to hurt anyone who stands in her way." Adam felt a chill run down his spine. He had never imagined something so dangerous could be so close to him. The stakes had been raised, and now he was caught in the middle of a fight between two forces far beyond his understanding. "I don't care how dangerous she is," Adam said, his voice steady. "I'm not leaving you, I promised you that." Lyra looked at him, her face unreadable. For a moment there was silence, and then, without warning, she turned away, walking to the edge of the roof. "I don't belong here," she said softly. "I don't belong on Earth, I never have." Adam followed her, stopping a few feet behind. "What do you mean?" Lyra's gaze turned to the stars above, and for a brief moment, Adam thought she was talking to herself more than him. "I'm not from here. I was born somewhere else, somewhere far away." Adam's heart skipped a beat. "What are you talking about?" She looked at him again, her eyes filled with an emotion he couldn't place. "I'm not like you," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I have powers I don't understand, but that woman knows them. She's afraid of them, that's why she's hunting me." Adam's mind raced. Powers? What kind of powers was Lyra talking about? His first thought was that she was just a frightened child, making up stories to cope with everything that was happening. But looking into her eyes, he saw the truth. She wasn't making this up. She wasn't lying. "Where are you from?" Adam asked, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. "Where did you come from?" Lyra turned her back to him, her face softening. "It doesn't matter." "It's too late. She's already found me. She won't stop until I'm gone." Adam couldn't stand hearing the fear in her voice. He knew she was right. If the woman had found her once, she would find her again, and next time there might not be an escape. "We can't run forever," Adam said, determination setting in. "We need a plan. We need to fight back." Lyra shook her head. "We're not ready," she whispered. "Not yet." Adam grabbed her arm gently, turning her to face him. "We'll never be ready if we don't try." "You're not alone in this, Lyra. You're not going to face this by yourself." For the first time since they had met, Lyra's eyes softened just a little. There was a flicker of something, hope maybe, but it vanished almost as quickly as it had come. She pulled away from him, taking a step back, and then said something that froze Adam's blood. "She's coming," Lyra said, her voice low. "I can feel her, she's close." Adam's stomach twisted, and he glanced around. The street below was empty, the sounds of the city still quiet in the distance, but the feeling of being hunted, of something closing in, hung thick in the air. "Where?" Adam asked, his voice rising in panic. "Where is she?" Lyra didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, her face twisting in concentration. Adam felt a surge of energy in the air around them, a faint hum that seemed to vibrate against his skin. It was like nothing he had ever felt before, and for the first time he began to understand what Lyra had meant. She wasn't just a scared child, she was something else, something powerful. As she opened her eyes, Lyra's face was set with an expression he couldn't read. "She's here." Adam's heart stopped. He turned quickly, looking in every direction, but there was nothing, no sign of anyone, but he didn't need to see her to know the truth. The danger was real. And this time there would be no running. Adam's heart raced as he turned, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. The words Lyra had spoken echoed in his mind. "She's here." He couldn't see her, couldn't hear her, but that didn't mean she wasn't close. The woman who had chased them earlier, the one Lyra called her mother, was near. Adam could feel it in the air, like an invisible pressure building around them, like the quiet before a storm. He had no idea what kind of powers Lyra had, but he could tell they weren't just ordinary skills. Whatever she could do, whatever this woman was hunting her for, it was something big, and Adam wasn't sure he was ready for it. Lyra stood still, her body tense, her violet eyes scanning the darkness. She seemed to be listening, her senses sharp, attuned to something Adam couldn't understand. He wanted to ask her more about the powers she'd mentioned, what exactly she could do, but now wasn't the time. They didn't have the luxury of questions, they had to move. "We need to go," Adam said, his voice low but firm. "Now," Lyra nodded, her gaze flickering briefly to him before looking back at the rooftop edge. Adam could tell she was thinking, weighing options in her mind. There was a flicker of doubt in her eyes, but it was quickly replaced by the same determination that had appeared earlier. She wasn't running from danger anymore, she was running toward it. They had to act. Adam couldn't let her face this alone. "We can't hide up here," Lyra finally spoke, her voice quiet but resolute. "We have to leave the city. She'll find us if we stay in one place too long." Adam's mind raced. He wasn't sure where they could go. The city sprawled out before them, dark streets, endless alleys. But in this world of shadows and secrets, the people they were running from had no boundaries. Lyra was right, they couldn't afford to wait. "Okay," he said, making up his mind. "Let's get to the docks. We'll find a way off planet. I know a guy who can help us." Lyra didn't question him. She just nodded as if she had trusted him with her life already, and maybe she had. She was already moving, leading the way as they made their way to the edge of the roof. Adam followed, trying to keep up. His legs ached from the long night of running, but he pushed through, his focus on Lyra. He didn't know what kind of fight they were walking into, but he wasn't going to leave her. Not now. Not after everything they'd been through together. The fire escape creaked as they descended quickly, Lyra taking the steps two at a time with ease. Adam followed her, his heart pounding in his chest. They reached the ground, and without a word, Lyra moved down the alleyway, keeping to the shadows. Adam kept close behind her, trying to stay quiet. Everything seemed to be in slow motion. Every step felt heavier than the last. He was afraid that at any moment they would hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind them. The woman, the assassin, would catch up with them. He could already hear her voice in his mind, the calm, cruel tone as she demanded Lyra come with her. But as they moved through the alley, Adam couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The streets were eerily quiet, the only sounds the distant hum of traffic and the occasional honk of a car. They were close to the docks now, but Adam's eyes kept flicking back toward the street. Something wasn't right. Then, without warning, a sudden crash echoed through the alley. A dumpster flew across the path, smashing into the brick wall with a deafening noise. Adam whipped around just in time to see a figure step out from the darkness. It was her, the woman, Lyra's mother. The woman's presence was suffocating, her cold eyes locking onto Lyra with a mixture of anger and something else, something much darker. Lyra's mother didn't move immediately, but Adam could see the tension in her posture. She was poised, ready for a fight, the predatory look on her face unmistakable. Adam didn't hesitate. He grabbed Lyra's arm and pulled her behind him, stepping in front of her, trying to shield her with his own body. "Stay back," he said, his voice strained. "I'm not letting you take her." The woman tilted her head slightly, studying Adam as if he were an insect she could crush with a flick of her finger. "You're in the way," she said, her voice cold. "I don't have time for you." Lyra stepped forward, her voice trembling but filled with resolve. "I'm not going back with you," she said. "You can't make me." The woman's lips curled into a cruel smile. "You don't have a choice, child," she replied. "You've always been mine whether you like it or not." Adam's heart clenched at her words. He didn't know what kind of twisted relationship they had, but it was clear Lyra's mother wasn't interested in loving her. She saw her as an object, something to be controlled, something to be used. And Adam wasn't going to stand by and let that happen. "You're not taking her," Adam said again, his voice firm. "Not today." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You still don't understand," she said softly. "She's dangerous. You're protecting something you don't even know. If I don't stop her, the galaxy will burn." Adam's heart skipped a beat. What was she talking about? What kind of power did Lyra have that could cause the galaxy to burn? He didn't have time to ask. The woman stepped forward, her hand raised, and before Adam could react, she launched herself toward him. But Lyra wasn't standing still. In one fluid motion, she stepped in front of him, raising her hand, and a blinding flash of light erupted from her fingertips. Adam instinctively ducked, shielding his eyes as the light flashed, but when he looked up again, he saw the woman staggering back. She was shocked, momentarily disoriented, her face twisted in disbelief. Lyra stood tall, her hands glowing with energy, her body radiating power. The woman had clearly underestimated her. You have no idea what you've done," the woman hissed, her eyes now filled with fury. She rubbed at her chest where the energy blast had struck, but she didn't seem injured, just enraged. "You think you can stop me with this little trick?" Lyra's lips tightened. "I can stop you," she said, her voice steady. "I won't let you hurt anyone else." The woman lunged again, faster this time, but Lyra was ready. As the woman reached her, Lyra raised her hand, and another pulse of energy blasted the woman back, slamming her into the alley wall. Adam watched in awe as the woman crumpled to the ground, momentarily dazed. But he knew it wasn't over. This fight was far from over. "We need to move," Adam said urgently, grabbing Lyra's hand and pulling her away. They ran, Lyra keeping up with him, her pace quick and sure. They didn't stop to look back, didn't stop to check if the woman was coming after them. They had to keep moving. There was no time to waste. They reached the docks a few minutes later, Adam's heart still racing in his chest. He spotted the old freighter ship he had in mind, its faded paint barely visible in the moonlight. It wasn't the nicest ship, but it would get them off-world. "Let's go," Adam urged, pulling Lyra toward the ship. But as they neared the entrance, a loud voice rang out behind them. "You can't run from me, Lyra." The woman's voice carried through the night, and Adam felt a chill run through him. He turned just in time to see the woman rise to her feet, her eyes blazing with fury. Lyra's face hardened. "We have to go now," she whispered, grabbing Adam's arm. Adam didn't wait. He ran, pulling her aboard the ship as the sound of footsteps echoed behind them. They didn't know how long they had before the woman caught up. But for now, they had one chance to escape. The freighter's engines roared to life, the ship lifting off the ground as the city slowly faded into the distance. As the ship ascended, Adam glanced at Lyra. She was staring out of the window, her face shadowed in the dim light. He didn't know what kind of future awaited them, but he was sure of one thing: he wouldn't stop protecting her. Not now. Not ever. The freighter's engines hummed steadily beneath their feet, the low vibration echoing through the ship's hull. Adam stood by the control panel, his hands gripping the edges as he peered out through the narrow viewport. The city that had once seemed so familiar to him was now a distant blur, swallowed by the night sky. He didn't know what awaited them, but they couldn't stay. They couldn't go back to Earth. Behind him, Lyra sat quietly in one of the cargo hold chairs, her eyes distant, staring at nothing in particular. Her arms were wrapped around her knees, and her face was lit by the faint glow of the console screens. Despite the calm surroundings, Adam could see the tension in her posture, the weight of something she couldn't shake. He could feel it too, an invisible pressure building, like a storm that hadn't yet arrived. The woman, the assassin who claimed to be Lyra's mother, was still out there. They had barely escaped her. Adam had no idea how long it would take before she found them again, but he knew one thing: they couldn't afford to rest. Every second was another moment closer to being caught. Lyra's voice broke through the silence. "How far are we from the nearest planet?" Adam glanced over his shoulder. Her tone was calm, almost too calm, but there was a certain sharpness to it that told him she was still processing everything. "We've got a few hours before we hit the next system," he said, turning back to the console. "We'll stop there, get some supplies. Then we can figure out where to go next." Lyra didn't respond, but Adam could feel her eyes on him. He wasn't sure what he expected her to say. Maybe a thank you, maybe a question, but it wasn't that simple. He could tell she was lost in her own thoughts, wrestling with things that Adam couldn't even begin to understand. He had never asked her about her past, about where she came from, or what she had been through before they met. Part of him wanted to, but another part of him knew she wasn't ready to share that yet. She had enough to deal with, and Adam wasn't about to push her for answers. He turned back to the viewport, his eyes tracing the stars in the distance. He wasn't a hero. He was just a guy trying to survive, trying to do the right thing. But now he was responsible for Lyra's safety. That thought weighed heavily on him. He wasn't sure if he was capable of protecting her from whatever was coming next. But he wasn't going to let her face it alone. The ship's systems hummed, and the soft whir of machinery filled the silence. Adam took a deep breath and let it out slowly. The worst was still to come. Lyra's mother wasn't just some angry parent. There was something darker about her, something far beyond Adam's understanding. The woman had a mission, and Adam wasn't sure he could stop her. A soft click sounded behind him, and he turned to see Lyra standing, her face as emotionless as it had been earlier. She had moved closer, silently, and now stood beside him, looking out the same viewport. "You're worried," she said, her voice quiet. Adam nodded. "Yeah, I don't think we're safe yet." Lyra was silent for a moment, her eyes narrowing as she stared out at the stars. "She'll find us," she said, her voice so calm that it sent a chill down Adam's spine. "She always does." Adam opened his mouth to speak, to tell her that they'd be fine, but the words stuck in his throat. He couldn't promise her that. He couldn't promise her anything. They were out there in space, far from everything familiar, with a dangerous woman hunting them down. He finally managed to speak. "I'll keep you safe, I promise." Lyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Adam thought she might say something, maybe thank him for his promise. But instead, she turned her gaze back to the stars. She was lost in her own world, and he couldn't reach her. Adam's thoughts drifted back to the woman, the assassin. He couldn't understand why Lyra's mother was so determined to bring her back. What was it about her? What kind of power did she have that made her so important? He couldn't deny the fear in the woman's voice, the way she seemed to treat Lyra like a weapon. But why? What did Lyra have that could destroy the galaxy? He shook his head. He didn't have the answers, he didn't even have a plan. They were on the run, and that was all he knew. But that wasn't enough. They couldn't keep running forever. They had to make a stand at some point. Lyra shifted beside him, and he turned to look at her. She was still staring at the stars, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the console. There was something about her now, something different. It was as if she had changed in the short time they'd been together. She wasn't the same scared child he had first met. She was something else now, something dangerous, powerful, and though she didn't want to admit it, Adam knew it. "Lyra," Adam began carefully, "you're not alone in this. I'm here for you, no matter what." She didn't respond right away, but after a long pause, she turned her head to look at him. Her eyes, those deep violet eyes, held something he hadn't seen before. They were full of pain, yes, but also something else, something he couldn't name. "I know," she whispered. "But this isn't something you can protect me from." Adam's chest tightened at her words. "I'll try," he said softly. "I'm not going to leave you no matter what happens." For the first time, a flicker of something like a smile tugged at the corner of Lyra's mouth. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but Adam saw it. He knew she didn't believe him completely, not yet, but that small gesture meant something. It meant she wasn't ready to give up hope. The ship hummed beneath them, the stars outside streaking by in long arcs as they made their way further into the unknown. The weight of the journey ahead pressed heavily on Adam's shoulders, but for the first time he felt a small flicker of hope. They would make it out of this. They had to. Several hours passed in relative silence. The only sound was the quiet hum of the ship's engines and the soft beeping of the consoles. Adam had been watching the stars outside, lost in thought, when the system alert pinged suddenly, breaking the stillness. He rushed to the console and checked the incoming transmission. A message had come through, a simple line of text. "She's here." Adam's stomach sank. His eyes flicked to Lyra, who had moved across the room, her back to him as she continued to stare out of the viewport. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her body stiffened when she saw the message. "She's found us," Adam muttered, his mind racing. "I knew it wouldn't be long." Lyra turned slowly, her face a mask of emotion. "It's time," she said quietly. "We can't run anymore." Adam felt a surge of determination rise inside him. He wasn't going to let her face this alone. They had no more time to hide. Whatever was coming next, they would face it together. He stood up and moved toward her, his voice steady. "We fight. We stand our ground." Lyra met his gaze for a long moment. Then, without another word, she nodded. The ship shuddered as they dropped out of warp speed, and in the distance, a new planet loomed ahead. The soft blue and green of the atmosphere almost looked peaceful, but Adam knew better. This was just the beginning of something much larger, something that would change everything. They couldn't escape the past, and they couldn't run from Lyra's mother forever. But Adam was ready to fight, ready to stand beside her and protect her no matter the cost. It wasn't over yet, but this time they were going to take the fight to them.